that kind of a scenario could arise, and that would fit what we've got for November. November is going to be a very interesting month relative to the whole, what we can think of as disclosure with a large D.
Okay.
Because the Alien Wars meme really took off relative to November. It took off in terms of its emotional, what we think of as the sums of the emotional duration and impact. That was really the beginning of the alien component of this interplanetary warfare thing starting to show up. So it wouldn't surprise me, for instance, to find that there's a bunch of discussion about the bombing that occurs in November, along with other things relative to the alien war meme in a larger sense. And that would include our predicted release somewhere, some fundamental physics that will end up supplying the physics discovery that will end up supplying the scientific platform for the new electrics in about 5 years from now.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it should be, a good time to look at science magazines and scan the internet for this kind of stuff, because there's going to be some kind of, it'll probably come from quantum or scalar effects, torsion field somewhere in that area, I would imagine.
Okay. So what we're looking at, it seems like the last few months here of 2009 might prove to be quite busy for everyone.
Chock-a-block full.
Yeah, we're talking about financial stuff. Let's not forget the flu thing, the chemtrail stuff, the alien wars. My goodness.
Yes, I know. It's like,
is our plate
please,
full?
I want a vacation. Yeah.
I know. Is our plate full or what?
Yeah, and that's just the start. The real chaos comes in when all that whole mess is stirred together in 2010. We're going to have the refuseniks that are going to start this, in fact, have started all around the country and all around the world. We have instances here in the Northwest in Washington State where local news is talking about basically trying to ridicule or shame them into it, about local health workers that wouldn't take the vaccine. And so we're seeing this refusenik meme start to show up. That'll be huge in 2010. But basically you're sort of correct. I think the rest of this year, until the end of December, will provide us with the mise en place, all the little prepared bits and pieces that are going to go into our stew for next year. So all the themes we see develop between now and say the end of December, we can look forward to expand and become much larger over 2010, especially driven by the economic problems. The shock of the dollar collapse as a global reserve is going to impact the U.S. in a rather sudden and shocking way, because our just-in-time supply system, already stressed, is going to be severely stressed, and a lot of our data pointed to very atypical reports of food riots over the course of winter. And usually, people in the Northern Hemisphere are not known for rioting or having revolution much in the wintertime.
No, but it's been pretty interesting, some conversations that have been taking place over the past, literally just the past few weeks, about people's behavior in just inclement weather and what they're doing. And all of my opinion is that all of this stuff that we're just being force-fed, whether it be in the news or whatever, it is just so negative, and it's just so overwhelming that people are in this fear-based state of being. So everything then becomes extraordinarily pronounced or accentuated, and people really are kind of like freaking out over the littlest things they wouldn't have normally done. And then we compound
I understand what you're saying. You see that in a projection, in the sense that they start internalizing this stuff and then projecting it back out.
Yes.
But also this time we have to acknowledge that there's the whole idea of Gurdjieff's Solaluneus, that the energies of the sun will come on down and fry our brains basically at the emotional level and make us all a little bit irritated and touchy. And I'm certain that that's the case. We're also, by the way, hearing reports of I've got some friends of mine, people that had bought software a long time ago, that kind of thing, and we have association, but they're living in the Caribbean and over in the bulgy part of the Amazon Delta north in far northern Brazil, and they're telling me that there's strange stuff coming on with the sun, and people are getting sunburn, radiation poison, really, within a very short time of exposure, and that this is relatively recent in the sense that it's been only these past few weeks that they've been experiencing this. So I think that, to a certain extent, some of the solilunius madness that's out there is indeed we need to stop and examine and see if our response at the moment isn't out of proportion, and could it be driven by something external like this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's another factor to put into all of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people won't stop in the middle of their anger and say, oh, it's the sun. It's not really me. That guy really didn't mean to offend me by, speaking Polish in my presence or whatever it was that, set him off.
It could be anything. He wore a blue shirt and it was supposed to be Red Friday.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, really, it can be that kind of a simplistic thing that's happening. Well, and here's my thought, in whether the moon was actually bombed or not. I'm like, I cannot think about how even more ignorant that could be. It affects everything. The moon affects our emotions, our tides, and all that. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not quite sure what the real purpose is behind this, but obviously it's certainly not a positive.
Their claim about hunting for water would seem spurious at best.
Yeah,
it's very much like the claim that they lost that Mars observer thing because of a difference where one set of engineers used millimeters and another used inches.
Yeah,
I'm
whatever.
sorry, I just don't buy these.
No, lots of disinformation.
Yeah.
Lots of disinformation. And speaking of that, when you're doing your reports, Clif, how do you filter out what could be disinformation? What is there some kind of a
basically, I mean, it's a real good question. How prone are we to manipulation, and how does that actually achieved? And basically, what we do is we have this hit list of about 300,000 or 400,000 forum chat, not a chat area, but a forum where people would post stuff. And when we get there, then there are these large lists of words that we're seeking. And then what we do is that we pick up the words on either side of it, out 2,048 bytes on either side of the word that we found that is within our list. And when we bring them back as hexadecimal integers. And then we throw out all the articles and a bunch of other words we just don't care about. So from that point on, from the point that we read them on, most of the work is about throwing words away. So we might get 100 million words and reduce it down to something manageable, say 40 or 50 or 60,000 words that we actually would pour through, maybe 100,000 in an in-depth fashion for a report. So that right there has a tendency to concentrate such that they would have to have huge amounts of the internet filled with repetitious kinds of word patterns in order to affect our aggregation process. And one of the things that we do is to look for interesting patterns of words that show up, which is actually how we find some of the disinformation stuff out there. And I've thought of a curious business, which would be to sell some of our software off that actually would help people going out and find word patterns like this that indicate that, oh, this fellow over here is linked to that fellow because they're using the same talking points at this particular level of their discourse. And so you could, for instance, root out paid agents. It would be tedious, but maybe kind of fun. It was just a side thought. But basically, we get to get around the idea of being able to be manipulated by working from the archetype downward, and then really, to a certain extent, discounting the details that we get. And when we get the details, they're on the order of an individual word. Say, let's pick the word lockdown. Well, the lockdown subset here has about 5,000 active words within the first three layers of support, the 5,000 aspect attribute pairs or sets, because the attributes can actually be phrases. But in any event, those 5,000 are distilled out of on the order of maybe 20 million. And so they would have had to, if one were to try and deliberately skew it all, they would have had to have polluted, so to speak, perhaps 5 million websites. And if you're going to pollute 5 million websites, you're going to make mistakes and reveal the fact that you're doing so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, wow. Okay. That's cool. That's good to know. It really is. Because there's so much stuff going on that people are really trying just to figure out what is being said that is more truthful.
Right, and it makes sense, and it's a legitimate question, and I get it frequently, and basically because people hear that we go out and read lots of words on the internet, they think we're picking up the phrase, I see a lockdown in the banking system coming, but I'll never know it because I'm not ever going to see the words at that level.
Gotcha. I gotcha. We have about 5 minutes before we have to go for our long break, Clif. I know you had some notes. Is there anything in your notes that you would like to take the next 4 or 5 minutes and chat about before we take the long break? Or did you want to just jump back into the report and then move forward from where we were at?
Well, do you have another question you want to hit first?
Well, most of them, there was another person that had asked about the global coastal phenomenon, whether that was still on.